You can change your entire life by just changing one habit. Subscribe to our podcast and make listening a habit.
Change your mindset, manifest your dream life, and live magically with Rise and Align.
Raising the frequency one episode at a time.
Everything is always working out for us. Hello and welcome back to the new season of Rise and Align podcast, where we talk about all things high vibrational. We are your hosts. My name is Demi.
And I'm Haley. And in this season of Rise and Align, we are stepping into the role of the alchemist. Alchemy can literally mean transforming one substance into another, but energetically, we can transform our identity into something new. And in this season, we'll explore transmuting lack into abundance, confusion into clarity, dis-ease into ease, and how to really step into the role of the alchemist in your life and really just transform everything that has tried to break you into the very thing that builds you.
So alchemy is all about transformation. And if you have ever read the book, The Alchemist, the original meaning was about transforming one metal into another. But it's actually more of a spiritual meaning than a lot of people realize. And it's something that we are all very capable of doing. So within our physical world, there is always polarity. There is negative and positive within absolutely everything, from the most minuscule things like atoms to the biggest possible things that you can think of. And recently, I've been coming to the realization and studying a lot about how like and unlike are the same thing. And when people talk about alchemy, they often think of the quote that says, as above, so below. And they think that the mind is reflecting the reality or vice versa, right? And I do agree with that. And a lot of people, because of that, picture above and below, or the mind and the reality, as separate, but actually they're all connected and they're just different ends of the spectrum. So like and unlike are the same thing. And I think it's important to realize that when you are practicing alchemy, that you don't have to jump from one end to the other. You don't have to hold as much contrast around the subjects that you're thinking about, and that it's actually quite easy to change perspective. And when you do that, alchemy becomes easy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that so much. I feel like it can start off as something so simple, and in a way, like you were saying, it is simple, and it's a spectrum. And an easy way to start off by practicing alchemy is just noticing your thought. If it is more negative, immediately, how can you turn it into something more positive? Or how can you reframe it in a way that's like, well, how is this emotion or this experience actually going to benefit me? Or what can come from this? Like, what good can come from this? And you're immediately like, you're changing your thought process in just such an immediate way. And something so simple like that is alchemy. You're like transforming that thought or that belief or that experience into something more positive.
And more importantly, when you do that, you change your frequency. And that's the whole intention. Since everything is made of energy, alchemy is changing energy from one frequency to another. So say that you have a lot of negative energy around a specific topic. That energy, it can't be created or destroyed, so you can't just get rid of it. But what you can do is transform it. So you can transform it from all of this like negativity, maybe it's like worry, sadness, anxiety, whatever. You can transform that into power. And that's my favorite thing to do. When things are super chaotic in my physical reality, ironically, that's when I'm not stressed. That's when I'm like, you know what? Good things are coming. Like, this is going to flip. I can use this to my advantage. Like, chaos is happening. Good. That means change.
Mm-hmm. And you can use that as something to fuel like your creativity. That's where a lot of the best like art and music come from, is like alchemizing like your pain into art, which I think is so magical. And I also noted that concept of energy can't be created nor destroyed. And a really great representation of this that is more physical that you can see to kind of understand this is H2O or water, like how it can change and become so many different forms. So, water can also become ice and it can also become vapor. And I think that it's just really cool. It is like the breath that we have. And I just think it's interesting to think of like water being this ever becoming, and it kind of is like a cycle. I remember learning in like second or third grade, like the water cycle, where like it rains and goes into the earth and then it evaporates and goes back into the clouds and then it like rains. And obviously it can be frozen, it can come down as snow. And I just think that's super magical and a way that you can kind of think about how you can change forms almost, or like change energy, even though you can't create or destroy it, if that makes sense.
I think the topic of alchemy makes me realize how powerful our minds alone really are, because a lot of the times the argument around manifestation, for example, is that you must take action. And then there's a lot of people who are like, not really, like you can just start with your belief system, and the truth is, it is always a cycle. Like, if you change the belief, you change the feeling, therefore you change the action. And you don't really have to start with the action. You don't have to be like intentionally, I'm going to go to the gym every single day for 3 hours and I'm never going to miss and I'm going to go for the rest of my life. Like, you don't necessarily have to think that or act that. You can start thinking, I'm really healthy, I'm really strong. And like that just automatically changes the action. But in terms of alchemy and alchemization of emotion, you really only need to change your perspective in order to change the reality that you're experiencing. And sometimes it's as simple as doing that to have automatic and instantaneous relief. So if there's something that you're really stressed out about and it's your natural habitual behavior to focus on that and stress about that and talk about that, it's going to obviously keep building and you're feeding more energy to that, so the frequency actually gets stronger. But if you can take it, and it's a really great exercise to write it down with a lot of feeling and then pick out those feeling words and ask yourself, what is the opposite, right? Rewrite it. So I hate everything, everything's horrible, I love everything, everything is wonderful. And you can actually find truth in both, because again, like and unlike are the same thing. So both are true, at least to a degree. And if you can change your perspective in your mind on this specific subject, you can immediately start to recognize the truth in the positive version and therefore change how you're feeling, which can completely change situations. And for example, I have a friend who wanted to confront somebody and they were like, this person always flips it on me. They're always the victim. Like, it always, like, I don't want to do it because I feel like I'm not going to be heard. They're going to attack me. They're going to react how they always do. And I said, the only thing that we can do is change how we feel. And if you can visualize this person responding in the way that you really want and feel that way, and imagine, like, how does this feel? Like, they are hearing me, they are accepting what I'm saying, and they're even changing their behavior because they love me and they heard me. You're going to change the way you communicate to that person 1,000,000%. It completely changes, because instead of coming from the place of they're not going to hear me, I need to scream at them, I need to attack them, I need to try to maybe emotionally like control them or manipulate them. You don't have to do any of that if you're speaking your truth and you're coming from a logical, grounded place. There's nothing more powerful than that. And that completely changes the way the other person reacts. So again, law of attraction, how you feel changes entirely what you attract, because you can only attract what's a vibrational match to you.
Yes, that's so true. And I feel like to get to that point, you also have to do a lot of self-reflection and, the term shadow work. Like, you really have to deep dive into yourself and your beliefs and your emotions and just like where they might be stemming from. And this kind of leads me into, I want to talk a little bit about the history of alchemy, and then it'll make sense in a minute. But historically, as we kind of talked about, alchemy was the attempt to turn like a base metal, such as like lead or maybe silver, into gold. But like the Bible, people take a lot of this literally, right? People might think that meant literally, and it could have been. But many alchemists also believed this physical process was like a mirror to inner transformation. And so if you think about it, this gold could actually be a symbol of like wholeness or enlightenment, or like coming back to the light, or coming back to, you know, your divine being, or they've described it as like inner purification.
Alignment.
Yes, alignment. And also, as above, so below is a term in ancient texts as well. And that also is like suggesting the outer reality is a mirror to your inner reality. So if you can alchemize your external reality by like doing the work within, which I think is super magical. And another thing that I've came across in my research is there's a lot of reference to the philosopher's stone in like the Middle Ages, and what that was actually an alchemical substance in the Middle Ages, believed to transmute base metals like lead into gold and create an elixir for immortality. To me, immortality is like being one with your like divineness. Mm-hmm. So it only makes sense that this process of alchemy is an internal process that brings you back to God, which is your sense of almost immortality in a way. Like that can't be created nor destroyed, which I think is a really cool way to look at alchemy. Now, the process of alchemy historically was divided into stages. And there is, I think, and I've never heard this said out loud before, but the negredo stage, which is like the blackening, they call it. And this is like the breakdown, the decay, the awareness, the falling up, the part where your life is like falling apart. Things are crumbling around you. This is like where you're experiencing the grief, the pain, maybe the hate, the anger, and you're noticing that, and you don't want that. There's dissonance. And so the next step is albedo, which is like whitening or illumination. And this is like the love and light stage. Like you're learning about all these concepts that you want to integrate in your life. You know, you want the positivity, you want you want these things in your life, and you are maybe working on those practices and bringing that in and wanting that for yourself. But then is the reddening stage, or the rubedo stage, which is actually the integration, the embodiment, the wholeness, where you actually bring it back down into like 3D, and you're embodying that into your reality. And I think that is actually such a great representation of even what shadow work is. Like you're going through like the dark night of the soul, or you're experiencing something that feels not great. You have awareness, you illuminate it, you work on it, and then you actually are like a living embodiment of that. And I just felt like that is so cool that this was known like hundreds and hundreds of years ago and practiced, and that is like what we're trying to do today. But it seems like they were so much more knowledgeable about it then.
Doesn't it?
Yeah,
I totally agree. So, okay, I was listening to this girl. Her name on TikTok is the Twitchy Witch. Shout out to her because I really like this girl. She's got a PhD in alchemy. You're freaking cool, girl. I love you.
I love that.
And she was talking about the Kabbalion, which I've been reading, and which was what kind of brought me to the realization of like and unlike being the same thing. She said that the Kabbalion was written more recently, and it was kind of like copied from a female who wrote it like thousands of years ago. And then she's talking about the Emerald Tablet, which is in another language, and so which is kind of translated a bit differently in English than the true meaning, but also like thousands of years old. And were they more spiritually aware and energetically connected because there was so much less chaos in the world, because it was slower, because it was simpler? I kind of wish we were living like that sometimes, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But oh my gosh. Okay, so my brain was going in 75 directions while you were talking, and I was like, yeah, I want to talk. Okay, so one thing I want to say first is that when you're doing these exercises, if you haven't done the shadow work and you're not really of the awareness that mind, body, soul, and like mind and physical reality are directly connected, it can be hard to write the opposite of what you're feeling and believe it, right? Because your mind isn't really malleable. You're not like of the understanding. And I believe, and this is what Bob Proctor, who was my mentor, always said, is that the more that you study, the deeper your faith and knowing becomes. And that is so, so true. So when you are studying the universal laws, which I know we have a lot of episodes that involve those, so definitely go check out some of our episodes. It'll help clarify this for you if it's new terminology for you. But basically, the subconscious mind controls your emotions and all of your actions. And when you become like deeply aware of that, it sounds so simple, but when you study it, and when you study the universal laws, and when you study like the true meaning of alchemy, then your doubt goes away, because it's like a science, you know. It's metaphysical. It's not like a made up dream, not like baloney nonsense. Like it's a fact. And Bob used to say blind faith is useless. But when you study it, your faith increases like infinitely, and then you know. And the knowing is what changes the reality. So I want to say that first. If you're a little doubtful, just keep studying, because it will become a fact to you, and then that will dissolve the doubt.
So another thing with alchemy is that there are symbols or things that we see today that are just great representations of this. And being the witchy girl that I am, I just wanted to bring attention to this. So obviously the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail, this is a really good representation of like life, death, rebirth, which I think is kind of the process of alchemization. And I think that is a great symbol. It also reminds us of like, there's always a renewal. Even after the death, there is a rebirth. So it gives that sense of hope. Like there is something that is coming after the negative. And I liked that you said earlier, like when things like feel really chaotic in my life, I'm like, yes, this is great, because excited. Great things are coming. And I think that it's so important to know, like throughout our life, it's not just our literal physical, you know, we were born here, we live a life and we die. Like we have so many deaths and rebirths throughout our entire life that are maybe more energetic, that I think it's so important to embrace. And along with that, which kind of brings me to this symbolism of the phoenix, right? We all think of maybe magical girlies, think of Harry Potter, Albus's phoenix. You know, he basically combusts and then a new one takes his place. And I think that is a great symbol of alchemy as well. And, you know, rising from the ashes, and, you know, that death or destruction or fire, whatever is necessary in order to create space for the rebirth. And in real life, I think that it's so important to be okay with letting things go and allowing things to leave your life and to remove things from your life, because that is what can be helpful for you to actually alchemize things in your reality. I think that if you aren't willing to change anything about your current reality, nothing is going to change. Like that's just a fact. So if you are willing or open to changing something about your routine, something about your life, a relationship, or, removing that from your life, I think that honestly creates space for new things to grow in its place. And take that with a grain of salt. But I think it's not like you have to just be like, go through your whole life and get rid of everything or everyone in your life. But I just think for me, like the second I detached myself from something, like if I have been wanting something, but I have been attached to the old version of me that doesn't have that, I can't align with that vibration to actually like call that in. So maybe that is just taking a leap of faith and letting go of that job that isn't actually making you happy, or maybe it's taking a leap of faith and moving somewhere new. Like, I don't know, but I just think that that's such an important aspect of alchemization, is allowing the decay or allowing the removal of certain things in your life, or even just being open to it.
So after working with so many people, I think the ultimate fear of humans is death. And it's really interesting because if we think about as above, so below, we see so many cycles of death and rebirth in this physical reality. Even from the leaves on the trees, right? Like everything. And I mean, we know that like when human bodies decay, they turn back into all of the nutrients that grow the earth, right? Or any body. When things are burned, they turn back into I don't want to say this wrong. I think it's like nitrogen and a couple other things. Basically, we're all made up of the same stuff, okay? And it just cycles, it dies and it regrows, and we need it actually to regrow. So if we can see that there are many cycles and that death means rebirth within our physical reality, and we know that energy can't be destroyed, why is the fear so massive around the human death? Mm-hmm. Because maybe it's actually a rebirth into an even higher frequency, an even better, more expanded existence that we have yet to experience. I'm just saying. So it is really interesting. And the other part about this is, like, I do believe in order to alchemize, you have to be brave. Like, in order to get something, you have to give something up, sort of. And it is definitely like a vibrational version of you that you need to expand past in order to expand your frequency, in order to expand the physical reality. And that does take a level of bravery. So I was thinking the other day, like, no matter what path you choose, or no matter what level of the spectrum you choose, we're all headed to the same quote unquote end of this reality, which is death, right? But if you choose a healthier one, you might not get there as quickly. You might take a beautiful scenic route and enjoy it a little more. If you take a really brave route, then you might get to experience a lot more higher highs within this reality. So it's funny, like, how fearful our subconscious mind can make us, all because we're afraid of, like, failure, aka death. It doesn't matter which path you choose. It's not that serious. The fear is an illusion, actually. So, I suggest when you are thinking about alchemy and making decisions in your life, that you make sure that you're acting out of faith, because that's always going to lead you to a higher place. And then I did remember what I was going to say. So when I was listening to this girl, the Twitchy Witch, and she was talking about the real meaning of alchemy and how as above, so below, actually above and below are one. We're all one. Like, it's all connected. She said, you are not like the stars. You are the stars. You are made up of the stars, right? And she said, your dreams and your reality are not separate. Your reality is the stuff of dreams. And then I was reading the second Quicksilver book, Brimstone, and the main character was in a dream, and she's able to control her dreams a bit sometimes, and sometimes meet up with her mate in her dreams. Okay, just bear with me. So she is trying to open this door and the door is not opening. And she's like, this is my dream. Like, I get to control what happens in my dream. And so then she figures out how to open the door because she's controlling the dream. But here's the thing. This is your dream and you get to decide how it's going to play out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, but there's like deeper levels of knowing and feeling, right? And so when I was like reading that and like it's just coincidentally hearing these two different things in the same 24 hours, I was like, yeah, this is my dream. Like, mm-hmm. I get to decide. Like, I don't have to put up with anything that I don't want to be my dream, and I can create anything that I do want to be my dream within this reality, and so can you.
Like the 7 agreements.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
We are alchemists. We can do that. You have the ability. Do not let fear hold you back. And I kind of like my concept of like God and the devil is just different ends of the spectrum, different levels, different frequencies, different paths. Are you choosing faith or fear?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So good.
I love that. I also think that a big part of alchemy is that like letting go of maybe those subconscious beliefs that are keeping you in that box of thinking you don't have control over your dream.
Yes.
Because when you break these maybe constructs or societal ways of being that have been kind of presented to us and made us believe that that is just how it is, like if you can let go of that, you create like infinite possibilities for yourself. And so working through those is like the process of alchemy and what allows you to connect back with that gold, that enlightened version of you, that godly divine version of you, because you come back to the truth. Mm-hmm. And you remember, which I think is so magical. Mm-hmm. And I just,
Yes. Okay. So also I am a life coach. If you're like, I really want to do this, I don't know what my subconscious beliefs are. If your reality it doesn't feel how you want it to feel, then there are subconscious beliefs holding you back. And it is my job to identify what that is and help you break that and reframe that and go through that. And when I'm working with clients, a little trick, a little tool I like to use is when you're feeling any negative emotion, use it as a trigger to ask yourself how you are viewing this, what your perception on whatever subject this is versus what's God's perspective. Like God who loves you, who created you, like unconditional love perspective. And it doesn't matter what your beliefs are. Unconditional love perspective. And I guarantee you that anytime you're having a negative emotion, the perspective of all that is of unconditional love is not the same as the human subconscious perception you're holding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's been so helpful for me too. And it allows you to kind of perceive reality differently. It's kind of like when, maybe if you've been taught about meditating, they always often tell you to kind of step back and become like the observer. And I feel like that divine perspective can come through when you are acting as the observer instead of the human.
Yeah.
Which I think is so funny because I feel like I have my human self and then my godly self, and there's like two of us in here. Like it's not
like higher self.
Yeah. Like there's a couple of us in here trying to work together. And it's really funny. Like sometimes I'll look in the mirror and if you are just going about your day and you're just getting ready and you have your normal thoughts and whatever, like you're very in the 3D, but sometimes I look in the mirror and I'm like, who's that girl? Like I am like, I'm just in this body right now. That's interesting. Like, mm-hmm. and that's just that you could call it your higher version or whatever, but it's just so interesting that there are different perspectives inside of this body, this brain, this soul. Like, I don't know. I love the physical. It's so interesting.
It is so interesting. And I think like it's really human nature for us to be like, yes, like there's this like inner knowing, this inner being, this higher self that has this perspective that like I feel is truth. And then there's this like avatar human version, and this she's a little scared to be doing all this. She doesn't always listen to the one that she knows is right.
Yes.
But I think it goes to show you as well that like God is within us. And the more you connect and the more you realize all is one, the more you can act on faith and kind of combine those two perspectives and like, okay, my avatar can align with my inner being, and then we can create.
That's the magic when you do find the alignment of the avatar and the godly creator.
I don't know. Are we nuts or?
We're little like Barbie dolls that have like something like kind of trying to work behind the scenes.
Yes.
Okay, so I kind of want to get a little witchy with it. Do like a little witch's guide to alchemy or transformation. And as a witch, working with the 4 elements are a really important part of the practice. One, I really love to be connected with Mother Earth, and obviously working with the different elements allow me to do that. But also they are like the base elements, right? Alchemy is about transforming one element into another. And so when you work with fire, water, air, and earth, you're not just working with the physical aspect of those, but also the energetic aspect, which can be found in just about anything. Like even tarot, there are cards or suits that are like representative of water and fire and all the different elements. But you also see that in astrology as well, where there's like the fire signs, the water signs, the earth signs. So it's very innately connected in our experience here. So when you are working with the elements such as fire, the fire is actually what was used to purify the metal or to like transform the metal, right? It was actually what was the action element that was like creating alchemy. And magically, I feel like fire represents, that destruction of illusion. It can also represent like passion or initiation. And it also reminds us like, you can't say the same. You're not meant to say the same. We are meant to transform. And so to represent fire in spells or in my life, I like to use a candle. And why do we use candles in spells? It is because this is where you are trying to transform one life experience into another, right? So say you're doing an abundance spell. What are you trying to do? You're trying to call in more money, or you're trying to call in a new career. And why? Because you don't like your current situation, or you want to be making more money. So you are using this candle or this fire to actually to alchemize the energy of one into the other and like send that energy into the universe. And it kind of represents that symbolism, or it symbolizes that transformational aspect from one thing into another. Water, physically in alchemy, something would have to become it would have to dissolve and become a liquid before it could form into something else. So energetically, water can represent emotions, cleansing, your intuition. And this is kind of that aspect that connects you back with your shadow work, with your emotions. Like, are you allowing for that like emotional release or that alchemization of the emotions? Are you bringing awareness to the emotions that are maybe causing the dissonance in your reality currently? What you refuse to feel, you can't alchemize. So I think it's really important to connect back with that water element, that intuition.
Allow the flow. So important.
Yes. And ways that you can turn that into like a ritual are baths, like having like a ceremonial bath, swimming in sacred water. Like for me, that's like Superior, like connecting back to that sacred water, like energy. And I really do feel like that helps you connect back into that energy of like flow, like letting it flow. And then also, like literally just crying can be actually a really important aspect in alchemy because you are connecting with that sense of release and like letting that energy go that you might be like storing in your body. And then of course, I love working with moon water in my magical practice as well. Third, we have the air or the breath that we use. And, you know, this is kind of where our thoughts and our perception and our communication lives, is in this air element. And obviously, we've kind of talked about transformation or alchemy really requires awareness of yourself and maybe your beliefs and what is causing that dissonance. So really diving into your beliefs, which can be valuable, but also I think just connecting with this element like breath work is a really great way to connect with the air element. And to breath work in itself is kind of alchemy, because I feel like you are like, again, turning that like trapped energy in your body into something that allows it to release, kind of similarly to crying. But affirmations, like what are you speaking to yourself or telling yourself in your reality? And also just literally your words are spells. So, you know, our breath, we use our breath to speak our reality into existence. So how are you using that element? How are you using your word to create your reality? Because a lot of us can get stuck in like creating the opposite of what we actually want. And I think that is where that, obviously we learn the principles, and then that is where like the embodiment aspect comes in. So like, yes, you know, you should be saying this, or you shouldn't be like talking bad about your partner or whatever, you know that, but are you actually embodying that in your reality? So are you speaking what you want to experience? I think is really important and a great way to work with the air element. And then lastly, just touching on the earth element, this is like the physical matter. This is like your stability, like the real 3D things, like your health, money, you know, grounding. Are you becoming a physical embodiment of that growth that you, or that expanded version of you that you want to be? Like, how are you bringing that knowledge into the 3D and like embodying that in your body? Because the earth is kind of that like grounded, real 3D thing. So just thinking about how you can actually be that instead of just like that knowing aspect of the things that you want. So that's just my little magical rundown of the elements and how that can help you with alchemizing in your life, and maybe in spells, and turning your life into a little bit more of a ritual instead of just getting so caught up in the day-to-day that you are not taking that path of power to actually create your reality and alchemize into higher versions of yourself.
Yeah, I feel that spells can make things actually a lot easier, a lot lighter, a lot more fun. And because they are a physical representation of your intention, your mind is more easily accepting of the concepts when you use spell work. So you might think it's silly, but I am telling you, give it a try. Magic is real if you believe it.
Yes.
All right. So we always pull a little card. I suppose we should keep up the tradition. Huh?
If you're new here, we love to leave you guys with a little magical message at the end of the episode. And we're using one of our favorite decks, the Green Witch's Oracle. And if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, we have the video if you want to see our beautiful faces and our card that we pull. I highly recommend. You can see that on the screen right now.
I've never pulled a card so fast in my life. It came out immediately. Here, I'll give it to you.
Okay, so again, if you're watching, you can see the card on the screen. It is Roots, and it says healthy patterns and early growth. And there's kind of like skulls deep into the earth with like a really pretty network of like roots. And then there's like mushrooms. And also, I'm just thinking this is perfect for this time of year because this is being filmed just about in March, when this is kind of what is happening with the earth, is like early growth under the surface.
Roots create a foundation, giving a plant stability and strength. Twining deep throughout the soil, they are both anchors and explorers, seeking water and nutrients to feed the plant. Roots expand and divide, creating beautiful natural patterns. The root card reminds you to make sure your project has good roots. Don't race through this early stage of creation. If you ensure a healthy foundation in the early stages, your project will have a better chance of success. Like a strong root system that will support and nourish a plant, it's important to establish routines and healthy patterns you can rely on when life gets chaotic. A reliable foundation will bring you confidence and reduce pressure in times of stress. Reflection. Do you need to go back to the foundations of something to examine them and perhaps reinforce them? I feel like this fits so well because, one, what I said earlier about studying to gain faith, right? That's going to be your root system. When you know and you're not just like worrying and floating around and, letting your emotions be crazy and, not grounding, nothing really plays out or manifests or alchemizes. But if you've got that sturdy root system and that belief and that knowing and that faith, then, you're already en route for success. And setting intention and like using the spell work like we were just talking about is exactly that. And there's an egg in the middle of this card, which is, it all starts in the darkness. It all starts in the subconscious. It all starts with the emotions, with the thoughts, the beliefs, the intentions.
Yeah, like setting the groundwork. I think this also reminds me of the root chakra, which is actually the color red, which is one of the colors in fire. And I think that it is so important to root to rise, and rooting does mean like creating those healthy patterns. It does mean working through the shadow work so that you feel safe in your body, so that you feel safe to move forward into something bigger and better. Because if you don't have like the groundwork, you don't have the foundation to support that growth. And so root to rise, come back to yourself. Like, what can you set up for your foundation to like support the growth? And like, it's kind of that not jumping from 0 to 100. Like, you can make small decisions and changes in your life that can then help you grow.
Grounding and regulating your nervous system are like this. And even is something as simple as considering the way that you're standing on your feet, like making sure that you're balanced on all 4 sides of each foot and balanced between both legs can help regulate your nervous system and your root chakra, which is crazy and simple, but it's true. But anyways, thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited about this new season, and thank you as always for helping us raise the frequency.
Thank you so much. We'll see you in our next episode.
Bye.
Bye.